Hey, everybody. I'm Justin Crosley.
I'm Travis Campbell.
And I'm Mike Persine, and you're listening to Brew Strong.
Yeah, happy to be back for another episode of Brew Strong. Thanks for joining us either on the podcast or live on Facebook, which I finally figured out how to make work, I think, on the first try. Well, the first try today. It's been several tries for show recordings. Yeah, I'm a real tech wizard over here. And so we got that going. I am filling in for Jamil for another recording here and happy to be doing so. And today, as usual, we've got a great show for you. We've got our guest, Adrian Cook, who's from Blue Lake Hops, to talk to us about a unique wet hops product. So welcome, Adrian. Thanks for being on the show.
Hey, glad to be here.
I'm excited to learn about it. I've carried some wet hop beers, both the traditional kind and some of this new technology kind. So I'm super excited to learn what Blue Lake Hops has. And I know you guys were a real innovator, if not the innovator in the field. And so I'm pretty excited to learn about that. Before we go on, thanks to our wonderful sponsor, Blickman Engineering, after all these years, still supporting this show. And I love it. Usually Michael's got some anvil stuff sitting right behind him. You must have done some cleaning.
Yes, I've been slowly reorganizing, but yes, I got all the Blickman swag. I got Blickman gadgets, beer guns, auto sparges, riptides, hop rockets, rims rockets. I got it all over here.
I'd go as far as to call Michael a Blickman fanboy, just like I am with my Apple products. I have like every Apple product they put out.
Facts.
Like, oh, Blickman's got a new toy. I'm in. I need it.
Yeah, I gotta get it. It's gonna collect them all. It's like Pokemon.
It's Pokemon for brewers. Oh, they should do a promotion like that, I think.
Yeah, gotta catch them all. Gotta brew them all.
So hey, and I even have an anvil system sitting on the side right here too. So that's what I use for my test batches.
Oh, beautiful.
That's what I use for my every batch as an anvil.
There you go.
And that's at Sawyer's Brewing Company, also in Michigan?
That is correct. Yep.
Nice. I love a good homebrew system pilot batch.
Say that again. Sorry.
I love a good homebrew system pilot batch. You know?
Yeah. Well, it allows you to play and goof around and not worry about losing too much money. You know, that's really the convenient thing about it.
Smart. All right. Well, thank you so much to Blickman Engineering for being part of this and always keeping us on the air. So, Adrian, tell us a little bit about yourself and Blue Lake Hops as well. You were a home brewer before a brewer?
Yeah. So I started home brewing in 1992 after I went to Europe for the first time. I had my very first beer in Germany. Came back and my older brother was home brewing and I've been doing it ever since.
Nice.
So, and then within the last 4 years, I started brewing professionally. In the meantime, I had a couple other jobs too. I used to be a high school chemistry teacher. So that's awfully helpful in terms of the brewing science. And then I was an administrator at an arts camp. And then I started working with Jim Schlichting at Blue Lake Hops. And promoting his product, and then connected into the brewery within a year of starting to work with him. So it's been an interesting ride to go from the hobby that I love to do to doing it professionally now.
Amazing. And question, so if you had your first beer in Germany and then came home and started home brewing, you didn't even go through the whole
I'm just saying
lager phase that the rest of us had to go through.
That's right.
That's like losing quality full malt beer.
He lost his virginity to Carmen Electra. Like, come on.
Yeah,
like you can't come back and like, yeah.
You know, it's funny. I was just at
first time. It was okay.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, the first beer was a Beck's, but it was in Lübeck. So
okay.
But I actually just had that conversation last night. I was hanging out with my college roommate, and we were at a new place that just opened, and he was like, yeah, I totally skipped the whole like drinking the cheap beer in college because I went straight to craft beer because he was living with me. So
wow,
that's crazy. You're like a science project to me. I've never heard this before.
That's
for you.
Well, I was wondering. I mean, if you were in Germany, were you drinking at U.S. drinking age, or did you get like sneak in? You're 16 years old in Germany, you just have a beer.
I was 17.
There you
Yeah,
go.
there you go.
So
Yeah,
I
so
was
it's a
legal there,
Louisiana
and then I
drinking
came to
age.
the US, and
Yeah.
yeah, it was not legal. I was still in high school.
It was legal. You were in Germany.
Yeah.
Yeah,
see
but when
over
I
the
came
bar,
back
they'll
from
serve
Germany, I
you.
was homebrewing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You had
so
a need.
my first homebrew book was The Complete Joy of Homebrewing, the second edition.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's such a legacy, that book. That's great.
Right.
So, all right. And now you work at two places. You work with Blue Lake Hops, which is in what city in Michigan?
So we're in West Michigan, so yeah, we really do the hand map thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the largest city here is Muskegon, Michigan. We're about an hour from Grand Rapids, where Founders is, about an hour and a half from Bells. If that kind of helps with where we are in general.
Sure.
Blue Lake Hops is actually out in the middle of pretty much nowhere. It's about maybe 8 miles away from here where I'm at right now. And it's a hop yard. He does grow his own hops.
Okay.
He also has a beer garden and food and makes it a destination. And then the brewery I'm in, the town is actually called Montague. It's two small towns right next to each other. But our claim to fame is we are the home of the world's largest weather vane, which is right outside our window of the brew house.
Nice.
Is that the whole chicken instead of the half chicken kind of thing? I mean, don't we get the half rooster or no?
It's a boat.
It's a boat.
It's a giant brass ship.
Nice.
And if you go to our web, sawyersbrewing.com, you can see a picture of it on our logo. But if you can imagine, they took it down a number of years ago to refurbish it, and it's about the same length as a semi-truck trailer.
Wow.
And it spins around here. So anyway, it's pretty cool.
Where I grew up in the desert, we were home to the largest thermometer, like near where I grew up, and it was the stupidest fucking thing. And it was the biggest like promotion ever. You'd see billboards where like, you're 20 miles from the world's largest thermometer, and you get
You're
there
19 miles from the bar.
and like
You're 18 miles.
The thing
Paris
was,
Hilton, that's hot.
it was yeah. I mean, it was fairly tall, but it was nothing. It just had like a digital steps on it, and
really?
it was 110 degrees outside. It did its job, I guess. But
I had to have those extra 10 degrees, to get up there.
Yeah. So I'm kind of a fan of the world's largest whatever. Like it's kind of I grew up with it, so I think that's cool.
And we're a tourist town. We get a lot of people from the Chicago area, Metro Chicago area, that vacation and retire here for that matter too, because we're right on Lake Michigan. West Michigan is basically like California in a lot of ways, as opposed to East Michigan is more like the East Coast of the U.S., like New York, except it's more industrial. So beautiful beaches, and the summer scene here is great, and we don't have sharks either, so that's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool. Yeah,
Probably helps.
Yeah. And that, so you did say Blue Lake is a hop farm, but as we're going to learn about your other hop products too, I'm guessing that you don't grow all of the hops that you guys also sell.
No. So to kind of go through a little bit of the history, basically he came up with this idea of trying to develop a new product, and he's working with the other hop growers in Michigan to be able to take his process and then sell it in that manner. So it is a unique process in that regard. If I can tell you a little bit about the company, a little bit of history on that, basically what happened was there was a big boom right when the hop crisis of the 2000s happened, when drought everywhere in Europe and in the West Coast, and there was a large investment that was made in West Michigan and Northern Michigan to grow hops, because this was one of the largest hop growing regions before it moved to the Pacific Northwest. So New York to Michigan was the hop growing area. And what happened was we got hit by blight, viruses, and various things that wiped it out. And that's why it moved out west, where they don't have those kind of issues.
Okay.
So there was a thriving industry here. We also grow grapes. We have our own vineyards that are here, and cherry trees from Traverse City. Those are pretty famous. So a lot of fruit grown in this area. So when that happened, they did that investment. There was everybody was growing hops all of a sudden. You'd see polls going up. because they thought this was, the new green gold that everybody's going to get. But then kind of what happened was, well, who's doing all the processing for the hops? And then it started to drop off. So now the number of hop growers has reduced quite a bit in the last 10 years or so. During that time, Jim Schlichting, the owner of Blue Lake Hops, he doesn't know anything about making beer.
Okay.
So he's growing these hops, and he had homebrewers that were coming out to his hop yard and saying that they wanted to get the hops fresh when they were wet. So just to, define like what's a wet hop. Traditionally, a wet hop, you harvest the hop and you get it into the kettle as soon as you can. Because it's an agricultural product, it will start to decay quite rapidly and oxidize and all those gross things.
And traditionally, what is that window that it'll start?
So it's within 24 hours, basically, of harvest is typically what people do.
Right. So breweries across the country would typically get FedEx wet hops to brew with the next day. And this is in theory beer they're going to compete at GABF with, except for the seasons after GABF. But yeah, it's overnight FedEx kind of. So that's entirely different than what you're offering. But you're going to explain that.
Yeah. And the drawback, if you're a brewer and you have to coordinate with the farmer, if you're shipping too far, then that gets way too expensive. If your brewery is close enough to the hop yard that you can just go and get them and bring them in, that alleviates that. But you run into the issue of, if you're doing production, you got to coordinate with the farmer, which, their schedule is going to be different. And well, it's raining today, we can't get to that particular hop today, we're going to do a different one. So, there's stories that, you think you're going to get one thing, but you end up getting something else because that it's an agricultural product. You're at the mercy of the farmer to be able to do that.
Yeah, when I first heard about wet hop beers, years ago, and talked to breweries about this process, and we've done some shows about it, about that old school way to do it. And my question was always like, how the hell are you guys doing this? This sounds nearly impossible. And big breweries were doing it. Sierra Nevada was in on it. And I was in on some of the meetings with them because they just would give me access if I was coming to do recordings and stuff. And in the end, I always walked away going like, man, you guys must really love wet hop beers because this is an insane amount of logistics and work to make happen,
And I think the thing that is really for the beer nerds, the analogy that I like to use is it's like orange juice. You can get orange juice from concentrate. It tastes pretty good. But if you get fresh squeezed orange juice, it tastes better. Now, can you define it? No, but it tastes better. It is just different. And I think that's the character that you can get from a fresh wet hop that you can't get by other traditional means.
Okay.
All right. You could potentially run into the issue where, people need to learn, but was it Jamil used to like to talk about, I love that English flavor. You mean that stale took 4 months to get here flavor? People get used to that. I love that hop flavor. Oh, you mean that cheesy, you just opened the bag up that's been on the shelf for a year at room temperature hop bag flavor? Yeah.
Right.
Versus understanding what it's really supposed to taste like.
The skunked green beer bottles, European beer. And it's like, well, no, that's not what it tastes like over there.
Well, and to me, by the way, I do love your orange juice analogy. But there were some differences, and maybe this is indicative of how difficult it was to make a wet hop beer traditionally. Some of them would be super grassy. Some of them would not have that oh no, this quality is an extra level. Some of them would just have a lateral move. It was like, this one's different just because some of them were a bit of fresh lawn. Some of them were, and I'm guessing that more, of course, the quality of hops has gotten better over the years in general. But I'm guessing that's more about the difficulty in getting it shipped and put into a kettle fast enough, or a dry.
There's another layer that I would throw in there too, is when you are getting the hops right from the field, you have no idea what the content is of those hops.
Oh, right.
Moisture content, you don't know what's alpha acid. So then when you're a home brewer, like I was when I first started using them, you look up, how much do you use? And you'll see 4 times the dry weight, up to 10 times the dry weight. So it's a crapshoot. So when you talk about those grassy notes, they probably put a lot of hops in there.
Yeah.
And it's too much, but it's a guess, so you don't know. And that's where these products are different in that regard because it is measurable. We do know the information.
Yeah.
All right.
have the
Well, why
time
don't
to
we
test
do
it.
that? Let's
Oh.
take a quick break so that we can learn about this new process. I think we've got a good foundation here about how the old school way of doing it. And by the way, I'm wondering how many people are still going to do the old school way after everyone knows about this. But we're going to find out about the Blue Lake process when we get back from Adrian Cook right here on Brew Strong. Welcome back to Brew Strong. We are talking wet hops and the Blue Lake process today on Brew Strong, and excited to learn about it from Adrian because I'm guessing he's going to tell us, now that we've learned about a lot of the issues with traditional wet hopped beers, what you guys have done to fix it. But I wonder, can you give us a little bit of history of how the Blue Lake process came to be?
Sure. So the owner, Jim Schlichting, he was not a brewer. He doesn't know how to make beer. But these people were coming off the field to try and get wet hops to make wet hop beer. So he's like, what is this thing? And why
Was
do
he
they
just
only
a
come
farmer?
at the harvest? I'm sorry. He's a
Was he
farmer.
just a farmer? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And so what he did was he went to Michigan State University. They have a program there, New Product Innovation Center. And he basically went to them with like, why can't I get these available year round? We can get other fruits and vegetables available year round. They might be canned, they might be frozen. Can we develop a process that we can maintain that freshness without losing the quality of the product? So the process was developed with Michigan State University. And it's really, I talked to homebrewers too that like, yeah, I took my hops that I grew and I threw them in the freezer. And sometimes they just will turn into a slimy, mushy, gross thing that will happen in there. So the secret, if you will, is it's the process on how we do it. But the real basic part is basically it's vacuum sealed and it's frozen. It's how we do it that's magic.
Okay.
So it really kind of preserves it in time so that once they have a chance to thaw out, it is just like they were just picked.
I see.
Nice.
Okay. And now, by the way, I think it's brilliant that he was like, hey, this has already been done before. We're not even reinventing the wheel. Let's go find out what the food industry is doing and see how we can apply that to hops. Also brilliant to go to the university. Let's stay in our lane and let people who know what they're doing figure it out. So smart moves all around, right?
And, there's other companies, of course, that have come up with other wet hop and frozen products.
Mm-hmm.
But how any process you do to a hop will change its character. It doesn't matter what it is, just like in the brewing process, your equipment, all of those things are factors that will affect the flavor in the end. So, one company does a frozen hop product one way, we're doing it a different way.
Okay.
And then you have another, all of those things are going to be factors into how it works out. The one option that we decided not to do was the frozen whole cone, the quick freeze.
Okay.
We found a lot of negatives with that. And that's partly why we have the vacuum sealed. Space is kind of an issue. If you think of storage and how much are you going to put in your freezer? And when you have a large bulky thing as far as shipping, that's again more cost. But there's still the cost of shipping frozen. That's the highest cost overall.
So that you are doing some processing then, if you're not using whole cones.
They are whole cones. They are whole cones.
Okay. So now I'm confused because I thought you were saying we don't use whole cones.
So they are whole cones, and they're basically vacuum sealed and frozen. What I was saying was when you do the IQF instant quick freeze, you see the cone is still in like one piece; it's intact. So it would be like a flower, if you will, that's still got all its petals sitting there. But if you can imagine taking that flower and then vacuum sealing it, it doesn't look like
shatter it.
The way it flattens because of that kind of is what you're saying.
So,
like anything I've ever vacuum sealed. I see what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
You can actually here. So I go around with these little sample bags into breweries, and of course everybody thinks I'm walking around with a different product.
Yeah.
Right.
Because it looks
They're like, not in here, bro.
Or
especially when
you found the right place.
When I bring in the big ones. So this is how they come. These are 2-ounce packages for homebrewers.
Okay. And by the way, just
And
for those listening on the podcast alone, it looks like a basic, even like your home vacuum seal. It's a professionally vacuum sealed. There's absolutely zero air, and it has kind of, I don't know if crushed is the right word, but really squeezed around the wet hops, the whole hops.
and when you let them kind of thaw out a little bit, they will open up and you'll start getting the whole cone.
Oh,
And
it immediately looks like a whole cone.
See how well this shows up in the camera for the radio audience.
Very nice.
You can see the lupulin in there is still bright yellow.
Yeah, it is.
Do you
And
vacuum
this-
and freeze or freeze and vacuum?
That's part of the Blue Lake process.
Okay. I have an
And sign
opinion
an
based
NDA
on
for
what
that.
it looks like. It looks very good.
Trademark.
This hop, still bright green and yellow lupulin. This is from 2022.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that's a 2-year-old hop and it still looks and smells fresh.
Yeah. I didn't invent smell-o-vision yet, but it looks like it smells fresh.
Well, and this is where, so what I've been doing before this year, I was at HomebrewCon in San Diego and also in Pittsburgh. And we would have a booth that people would be able to check out the hops and rub them and smell them. And that's what Jamil got his interest and saw it when we were in San Diego. And it is just like they were picked. And they will actually start reabsorbing the liquid that's in there when you freeze them. Now,
Okay.
another layer that is with this is that we do have the data. So we have the moisture content, we have the alpha acid content, so you can actually make a more predictable beer and not get those grassy notes that aren't good. I mean, nobody wants to eat lawn in there. I mean, maybe somebody does, but
Right.
but you want to get that kind of fresh hop character.
Yeah, this is one of the fascinating parts that I think Michael was about to chime in before we took the break too, which is, yeah, being able to measure what's in these. That's got to be one of the biggest advantages, right? That now because we've come so far as brewers to be able to predict what our beer is like by the ingredients we put in it, but not these ones that we know nothing about. So.
And I think too, it's going to be individual's taste also. So I found that so on the website for bluelakehops.com, each of the varieties that we sell, it has all of the lab data there. And I also put in the calculation for the ratio as if it were a dry pellet. So I can tell you for most of them, they're close to 1 to 4. If you were to dry that hop out and make it into a pellet form, what it would be equivalent to. It's when people are going to 1 to 6, 1 to 8. That's when I think you start really getting those grassy notes.
Got it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I guess for me, I've done a couple wet hop beers just with locally grown Cascade. And I actually it was one step further than grass. It was almost like a wood, like stick. And so do you guys not experience that then with your product? There's no really woody aromatic, I always called it a myrcene bomb because, none of those hydrocarbons have been driven off at all by the drying process. So they're all still in the hops. And I made this beer where I picked the hops from this locally grown place and then they were in my beer 2 hours later. So I like to credit that with oh, this is the best fresh it gets. And I didn't know anything about the alpha, so I had to kind of take a typical number, and I think I did 1 to 5 was my calculation using the moisture content ratios typically seen in dried hops. So what do you think about that kind of
were the hops past their point of ripeness too? I mean, there's so many variables potentially that it's hard to say. But the lab data that we do have, though, the myrcene in particular, but all the hop oil content is quite a bit higher. The alpha acid's higher. Everything's higher than your pellets because traditionally when you make your hops, the first step you do is you dry it. Well, that heat is driving up all the aromatics. It's converting compounds. It's oxidizing things. But you have to dry it in order to stabilize it so that it doesn't start to decay the rest of the plant matter. So the higher amounts of the oils, certainly affects the flavor. Also, at the timing that you use it is going to be a huge part too. I don't use wet hops in the boil like early on. All you're doing is driving off all the good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So the wet hops, you're trying to get that fresh flavor. You want to use it at the end of the boil in the whirlpool. There's lots of different techniques that you can do with that so that you can try and preserve as much of that fresh flavor as you can without driving it up into the air.
All right, before we talk more about some techniques, I do want to also go back to another thing that you mentioned as sort of the introduction to Michigan hops, which was saying, one of the biggest obstacles was processing, right? So processing equipment is incredible. In fact, there's a ton of hop farms that don't own them at all. They send it to processors, but those processors have to be nearby, et cetera. Right. So not only does this process of getting us fresh wet hops get us fresh wet hops, but it actually solves the problem of processing entirely, right? Like if you just want to use wet hops year round, now hop farmers can grow, use this process and not have to invest in a ton. And we're talking millions and millions of dollars in equipment. You've kind of solved two problems.
The energy cost too, the energy to dry them. Think about, if they're using propane or whatever to dry the hops, that's a huge cost to the farm. So, in that sense, this is also a more environmentally friendly product in that regard too.
Right. So I now can become a small hop farmer in Michigan again or elsewhere, and not have to worry about kilning and processing. And I just need to get the freshest hop possible to, I guess right now to Blue Lake, or do you?
So
okay.
Our process potentially could be done anywhere. There's nothing unique about our equipment per se. It's industrial size. That's the only difference.
Yeah.
And what we do here is the other hop farmers in Michigan that agree to do this process, we go to their farm. They're doing the harvesting and the separating the cones from the rest of the vine and the leaves. And then we're basically collecting them in large bins. And then we take those bins to then go do our process, and then we keep them in cold storage.
Got it. So you could, and maybe you are, or maybe you don't want to talk about it, you could also presumably license your process for any hop farm to do this on their own hop farm.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
They're
smart.
And ideally, that's kind of the ultimate goal, is that we have this process happening anywhere, that it's not just limited to Michigan.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Understood. Okay. So now why don't we jump back to using this product, right? And by the way, right now, like how could I get it as a home brewer? How can I get it as a pro brewer?
So the main way to get it right now is to go to our website, which is bluelakehops.com. You could also contact me, Adrian at bluelakehops.com. The pricing that's on there is not specific to home brewers versus pro brewers. I actually, right before we went on, was doing a lot of adjustments on there, so that they're reasonably priced for what you're getting. The most expensive part, honestly, though, is going to be the shipping. So if you're out in California, you're looking at $100 basically to get them shipped across the country in 3 days and stay frozen.
That part's obviously important as well. It's not just that they're vacuum sealed; they need to arrive to the brewers frozen.
They're still frozen and vacuum sealed. Yep.
I can say that's the negativity of the fact that you want a 4-to-1 ratio, but that's the tax you're paying to get the fresh hops to wet hops.
Yeah.
You just have to write that off. If you want to do wet hops, that's what you're going to do.
Sure.
And as far as the sizes, we have the 2-ounce size, which if you're doing 1 to 4, I mean, you're going to want more than one package, and you can combine them and so on. But then we also have 2-pound packages, and then some of them are 1 kilo, which is 2.2. So there's a little bit of variation like that. But
can we call those birds?
I'm sorry?
Can we call those birds? 1 bird?
2 pounds.
Well, a kilo.
Nice.
Birdman.
And then, okay, once I do get them frozen, and let's say I get that 2-pounder because I'm brewing a lot, but I'm not brewing with all 2 pounds on my first brew day. What do you guys have experience and data about how long they're going to last in my freezer?
Data, no. There's an awful lot of variables there potentially.
Sure.
So when I first started with Blue Lake hops, he only did 2-pound sizes, which is, if you're doing a 5-gallon batch, that's too much.
Yeah.
It's just too much.
Yeah.
So then people were like taking axes and saws and like trying to cut them off frozen. And,
Oh, right.
you know, is that worth the effort? Which is why to go to the 2-ounce size, so you have more control of your amount.
Sure.
But if you do get the bigger size, I have done like let them thaw out a little bit kind of a thing, and you can kind of break it apart. And then if you have a vacuum sealer, I mean, you're a
Seal it
home brewer.
back
You can do anything you want. Vacuum
Yeah.
seal it, throw it back in your freezer. You know,
Right.
I would still try and use it as soon as you can, but once
That's like all hops, I guess. It's just kind of common sense with all hops. Once we open them, we should use them as quickly as possible.
exactly.
But if I buy the 2-ounce and I buy several varieties, I buy several pounds in 2-ounce packs, they can live in my freezer just like they can live at Blue Lakes indefinitely, presumably.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we have we started our first harvest in 2019 and went to market in let's see, that would be January of 2020. So if you think of that timeline, COVID shut everything down. We had lots of interest and then nothing. So now it's trying to like re-educate people, let them know that we're still there. So we've continued to harvest every year, and I'm still using in my pale ale, which is called Blue Lake Pale Ale, 2019 Cascade hops. And I'm telling you, when I open those packages, they are still like they're just picked.
Wow.
And we do have continuing testing that we're doing internally to like, how are they holding up? But our testing for hops doesn't match the industry standard, because the industry standard is for the pellets.
I see.
Our hop storage index for most of the hops is like 0.2, which is fantastic. I think there's and this is where the science people need to maybe, is the water that is in the natural content in there doing something to help preserve the alpha acid and those aromas from
Right.
breaking down further? And that's an unknown.
As opposed to the kilning process, which takes all of that moisture out.
Right. And because of that heat, you start other chemical chain reactions that are occurring that will slowly occur over time.
Yeah, that kilning process, it is aging the hops instantly. Versus getting the wet hop from you guys, it has none of that, none of the above.
Yeah.
I like to say the last time these hops heat was from sunshine the day they were picked.
Right. It's also, I think it's a super interesting question. I look forward to you guys eventually figuring it out, how the water potentially helps, like just sitting in its own water, in the water that it was born with, right? Like it was all in there and you've just kept it together. The very thing that will mess up other hops if they're just left out warm, right? So like it's a super interesting thing to me that you to figure that out.
Well, and I think that, when you think about the freezing process as well, I mean, for plants or if you get cold or whatever, ice forms inside of the individual cells. And when that ice forms, it makes a crystal that will grow out and burst the cell.
Right.
And that's how you start your decaying process.
Okay.
And that's kind of how do you stop that from happening? And that's the process that we developed with Michigan State.
Okay. And is Michigan State still involved in like the ongoing process of this?
We still talk with them, but not much. Most of what we're doing is we're sending analyticals to a company to get the like alpha acid and things like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Are they collecting royalties, or they still get is there a booster club for the hop program, or
students, man? We used to use students. That's what we got to. That's the American way.
Michigan State University does have it's an agricultural school, and they are closely connected with the Michigan hop growers.
Nice.
Okay. They do work with us on a regular basis.
So the company was founded, I think, in 2014, right? Blue Lake, I think I read. Correct. And you guys had this product come to market in 2020.
2019.
2019, yeah.
Harvest.
Yeah.
And then goes to market, December 2019, January 2020, at the same time that COVID was shutting down the world.
Right. It's pretty quick. It's pretty quick. It's unfortunate for you, but it's a pretty quick process you guys had there.
Yeah. Right.
All right. Well, why don't we do this? Let's take another quick break, and when we come back, can we learn like your best practices on using these wet hops from the Blue Lake process?
That'd be great.
All right. You're listening to Brew Strong. We've got Adrian Cook with us from Blue Lake Hops, and we'll be right back with more. Welcome back to Brew Strong. We're talking to Adrian Cook from Blue Lake Hops, and we've learned all about the Blue Lake Hops process to get us wet hops year round. You can go to, I think it's bluelakehops.com. Is that right? Yep. You can learn more about it. There actually describes the whole process and the product that we've been talking about there too, and you can probably figure out how to order some for yourself. I did ask before the break if we could learn about how to use them. And of course, Adrian's a pro brewer as well as a home brewer. And I know Michael and Travis are avid brewers. So I'm looking for some SOPs, some best practices on using these hops. I love it if you use your pale ale as an example or any other beer. I'm a pale ale fan. So kind of where do we start, Adrian?
For using the whole cone hops, I will say historically, back when I started homebrewing, you could buy pellets or you could buy cones. Now it's a lot more difficult to buy cones. And most people are so used to the pellets where you're throwing them in. Maybe you have a hop spider, but you want to have something to make sure your hops don't plug up, let's say your plate chiller if you're using that. With whole cone hops, they potentially could plug up more than just your plate chiller. They could plug up everything. And that makes for a really long brew day. So the most important thing is you got to have a plan on how you're going to keep those hops so you can actually remove them from your wort in your kettle. Nylon bags are fantastic. The hops will float to the top and stay in that bag. And honestly, I have some gloves. I pull the bags up, give them a squeeze, and get all that good juice out. That's the easiest way to deal with them, to handle them. In that regard. When you're using them as far as the timing in the process, I will use them at the earliest at like maybe the last 15 minutes of the boil. But then you could do, 10-minute, 5-minute, whatever the boil. I really prefer using them in the whirlpool. And that's another area that you can play with if you have temperature control for your system. Do you whirlpool that flame out? Do you drop the temperature down to 180 and do a whirlpool, or 160 and do a whirlpool? All of those different temperatures and times will be factors that will change the flavor of what you're getting out of the hops.
And in those instances where you're using this mostly at the end, I presume you're also using traditional hop products then for your bittering and whatever else?
Yeah, so I like using just hop pellets for the bittering. So for my pale ale, as an example, it's 100% Michigan Cascade hops. And I use pellets for the boil for 60 minutes. And then I will, at the end, at the flame out, I will throw in the wet hops. I do let them thaw out first. So it's kind of convenient to like throw them in the fridge, let's say overnight. If you take those hops and they're frozen and you throw them in your bag, my experience is you just took a big ice cube and you threw it in your kettle and you think it's just going to break apart. It doesn't. It doesn't happen real quick. So if they're thawed out a little bit, that is helpful. Or hitting it with your paddle, kind of breaking it apart. So I typically will let them thaw out and then put them in the nylon bag and then just kind of break it up with my hands to make sure I can get as much contact with the hops as possible.
Smart. And if I thaw them out, I mean, this is like, then we're treating them like fresh hops that just came from the harvest, right? So we want to use them in 24 hours if possible, right?
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Got it.
So are they aging at fridge temp?
Say it again. I'm sorry.
Are they aging overnight at fridge temp noticeably? I mean, they are at least still at fridge temp and packaged with your process.
So I'm working with the bigger packages. So if I throw them in the fridge, they're still kind of frozen when I pull them out in the morning. And then I'll just set them in my sink here as I'm brewing. By the time I have my first batch ready to go, I can break them up by hand. So you're not really getting that decay so fast.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you have some time to play with it. It's not immediate.
Yeah. And then, all right. So we got our late hop that we use. Whirlpool edition. What about anything else? Dry hop, or what did you want to talk about? Amounts?
Well, amounts, it depends on the variety of hop and its moisture content. But most of them are going to be close to 1 to 4. So for, if you traditionally in a 5-gallon batch of beer, you're throwing an ounce or two in your whirlpool at the end, you would want to go 2 to 4 ounces of the wet hop. As far as dry hopping, officially, I have to say that we cannot recommend that you use our product for dry hopping. It's for the hot side only.
Got it.
Per the FDA, hops are generally not consumed raw.
Ah.
So that's something to think about. You're literally taking this product from the field,
right,
freezing it. So if there's any friends along for the ride, they're still there. That's also true for your hop pellets, but they've been dried up and ground up and you don't see them.
Can I comment on that? Because I won't get you in trouble because it's me and not your company. That's some bullshit. Like, I mean,
okay,
so
but I have dry hop with them, to be fair.
Yeah. No, and I knew, yeah, of course. And I'm not trying to get anybody in trouble, but, all of the produce I buy at the grocery store came out of a field and it's been mildly processed, I guess. Right. And every farmer's market I go to. Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
The big one for me that is almost asinine is traditionally hops were used for their antiseptic characters that you would add hops to the beer to try to preserve it. And like, so these hops had antimicrobial properties, like using dry hop, like adding dry hops to beer was traditionally done to try to keep the beer from spoiling. Like these things, and they weren't using kilned and processed pellets. They were opening the bung hole on their cask and throwing cones in, like
totally.
Give me a break, FDA.
This is one of those lack of testing things. They're like, hey, we didn't test it. We're just going to say no.
Absolutely.
The list of foods that they have that are like generally not consumed raw is very small. It's like 5 or 6 things. It's not much.
Okay.
But hops is one of them for whatever reason.
Fascinating.
So one of the things that I have done with the hops, and I did it HomebrewCon in San Diego and Pittsburgh, was I had my blonde ale, which is just maybe 20 IBU, nothing special. I had a Blickman hop rocket, and I would pack that hop rocket with the frozen hops. And I had the Blickman carbonator, so that I recirculated within the keg. So if you think like a Randall, somebody has that at their bar. When you have a beer off from a Randall, there's chunks floating around in it, little hot bits. But in doing it, in recirculating in the keg with the carbonator, I was able to use the hop rocket as a filter. So I still had a beer that was able to pick up the oils from the wet product. And it tastes totally different than you expect. We had, as an example, Amarillo that we had VGF Farms shipped out to us. We did our process. And then Amarillo, you think traditionally like orange, citrusy. When I did that with my blonde ale, it tasted like watermelon rind.
Wow.
I mean, totally different than you expect. Crystal hops are your traditional American hop in a lot of ways. That one actually tastes like orange.
Wow.
Which you don't, that's not part of the descriptors that you normally see.
No.
So yeah, you can use them on the dry side. It's just not going to taste like what you expect it's going to. It's going to be completely different.
Wow. That just goes to show how much like chemical processes can change like the smallest things that turn into big things, like complete flavor changes. That's wild.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, back on the whole not to be used, you can advise using it in a whirlpool, in a dry hop. Well, this, and one of the questions I was going to talk to you about, you get you get hop creep for some of these newer pellet hops that aren't being kilned at the temperature they were being kilned at. So they're not exactly being processed as warm as they should be to not be considered a raw product. But I wanted to ask you, any chance are you able to test your hops for these whatever it is in the hops, I can't recall at the moment, that will lead to hop creep?
I mean, ultimately that's coming from the enzymes that are in the hops. That then those same enzymes are breaking down the sugars that
Right.
didn't get broke down in the brewing process.
So
So
they're probably
because
denatured
these
in the
are raw
whirlpool.
and they haven't seen any heat, hop creep could be a real potential for
Yeah.
sure, because they
And since you
all the
can't,
enzymes.
since you can't advise them for dry hopping, there's not a whole lot of sense in you guys testing to see which ones are high in this enzyme, which ones are low in this enzyme to start with.
Right.
Let us know if you start doing that testing.
I think you and Mike should do this testing at home, Travis.
Yeah.
See what
Honestly, the
happens.
only hop I've ever had hop creep from was Strata, and it was significant. And it was before it was a few years back, and before we had Vinny on a conversation. I don't think it was a show, and he explained it. That's when I found out they weren't killing the pellet hops to the same temperatures anymore, because they're trying to do what you're doing. Trying to get us a different flavor of the hop, a fresher flavor of the hop, and in doing so, they gave us a product that wasn't what we were used to using.
Mhm.
Right.
So, very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so late additions are best, and then yeah, at your own risk, you can you can dry hop. Any other best practices?
You know, I just want to emphasize that you got to have a way to keep them out of your plumbing. You know, bag them up, tie a good knot in the bag. I've had bags open up on me. That's not good.
Sure.
And I say that because I've experienced working with other brewers that got our product that they curse about it. And I'm like, well, did you bag them like I said to?
Mhm.
No, I just
And-
threw them in.
And you mean this in the pro brewery
Like
as well, not just in the home
Yeah.
brewery?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Good to know.
And you
Ed-
said your website has you've done the testing and you advise the ratio for each specific hop breed.
Yep. Yep.
And you mentioned earlier, you mentioned something I did once on that I should have done, but it was in a dry hop. You don't have, I mean, you have more mass here. You have the potential to leave more beer in the hop, but you have absolutely no qualms about getting on your gloves, especially for home brewers, squeezing that hop sack and getting that
Yeah.
hop juiciness and wort out of those. So you don't have an issue with extra absorption due to the fact you've got this mass. I
Yeah.
think you get a
Well,
little bit
so
more.
you know, that absorption is a good point, because some people will say, why would I want to use them? You're just adding water to the kettle. Or people will say, well, they're whole cone hops, so they're absorbing more. But there's already water in the hops.
Mhm.
So they're not absorbing more of your wort. As opposed to when you use a dry hop, you know, they're at 10% moisture.
Mm.
So, you know, think like a dry sponge. They're just going to suck up your wort, and that's where you're losing volume. When you're using wet hops, they already have moisture in them. They're not going to be pulling in as much to the plant material, but because of the fact that it's a whole cone, that's where you're thinking it can hold more. Again, kind of like a sponge. It's like fluffed out. So yeah, just give it a squeeze. You can
Wow.
see the oils that are still coming out of them. I had one hop variety. It's a new one out there called Vista, that I made a hop harvest beer with that. And there was so much oil in it that it actually left a yellow ring in my kettle. So I had to like kind of beat it down to get in there. So it's, you know, it's people worry about, you know, are you going to do something weird to it? Or just, it'll be fine. It's beer. It'll still be beer. If you're a home brewer,
Yeah.
it will be good. Just go with it.
I think the yellow
I
ring
think I need
around
some
the kettle
Vista.
is like exciting. If I were a brewer, I'd
Oh,
be
it was
like,
awesome.
"All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was so much oil content in there in that particular harvest that it was difficult to vacuum seal them, because when you vacuum seal it, it's pulling the liquid out,
Right.
and there's so much oil, it was actually interfering with that process.
Wow.
Extra wet hops.
Yeah. That's cool. What-
Oily.
I said I need Vista. I need to get to that website, get some Vista.
Oh, Vista's pretty cool. It's good shit.
And is that grown in Michigan too?
That's a new public release hop.
Okay.
It is grown in Michigan, but it's grown all over the place.
Got
So it was publicly released, I want to say 2 years ago.
Okay. I don't think I've
Um,
ever had it in a beer out here on the West
I
Coast.
don't think so
Unless I
either.
had it without knowing. Yeah.
I think the original developer was over here. I don't know which university worked on it, but again, it's a public hop instead of private.
Okay.
Which the private hop industry kind of is ruling the roost, so to speak, right now.
They are. They're investing a lot. Yeah. Okay. Um, what about what kind of beers other people have been bringing you with this product? I presume it sounds like you're around homebrewers a bit, and are you tasting all kinds of different styles of beer with this, or is there kind of a common theme for wet hop beers?
Generally, people are trying to do like you're trying to get that hoppy flavor, so you're looking for the hoppier styles.
Okay.
I have had people, and I've made other styles as well. So pale ale and IPA just kind of naturally lend itself well to trying to you know give that hop essence as much as possible. I have a brown ale on tap right now. I have a beer that's a single hop, the German hop we need to talk about still. Saison, using wet hop.
Okay.
That's one that I actually want to make here at the brewery, using Sriracha Ace, wet Sriracha Ace, getting that lemon and dill thing in there.
Nice. I would think, I wish Jamil was here to comment on this part too, because I know he loves English beer so much. I would think that even like an English bitter or English mild to take the place of that cask, that cask dry hopping that they do right at the, so that you're drinking it out of the same vessel. I would think that these wet hops could do well in those beers too, to give you that fresh flavor.
Well, and it'd be even better if we could get English hops into our process, and then you could put those in your beer too. And because we have mostly Michigan hops, I think another thing to throw out there is that hops do have terroir. Depends on where they grow, how their flavor is. And kind of the best known example in Michigan is Michigan Chinook. Chinook that's grown in the Pacific Northwest has pinene is the compound that's in it. Michigan Chinook does not have any pinene in it.
Wow.
Wow.
It actually is pineapple is the ester that you can smell.
Interesting.
So I have on tap year round a Michigan Chinook wet hop beer that's available. So yeah, you open up the bag, and I'll go up to customers and like, smell this, and they're like, oh, what is it? And it's like, pineapple? Oh yeah, it's totally what it is.
Yeah.
And that's a really cool thing about Michigan grown Chinook specifically.
Oh, that's super cool. I made a beer with Firestone Walker once. It was our Pale 31 clone. And the brewer, Matt, he's from Michigan. And he laid out all these hops for us. And the hop that me and my whole team chose that was the best hop on the table. And it surprised us because there was a bunch of new school hops on there. The best hop on the table was Chinook. And now you've got me wondering if he was sneaky and brought in like Michigan Chinook. Because I was like, that is not like Chinook I've ever smelled. That's amazing.
Yeah, I think another one, so the brown ale that I have on tap right now, I have Brewer's Gold, Michigan Brewer's Gold. Brewer's Gold is a traditional bittering hop. But when you look at the flavor profile, the descriptors that are written on there, one of the things that it says is elderberry. Now, you don't think of elderberry with you smell Brewer's Gold.
Yeah.
But I actually, so this was another way that you can use the hops. I actually used the hops in the mash, the whole cone hops. So this is Tasting McDole's Janet's Brown, essentially. Use Brewer's Gold in the mash. And then in the kettle, I used some more Brewer's Gold whirlpool, and I also used a German wet hop called Ariana, which also has elderberry in it. And that's why I wish I could have gotten the beers out to you, because you drink the beer and it's like nice and malty, and you get the hot bitterness, and then there's that berry taste at the very end.
That sounds good.
And it's just
go ahead and send us some.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please.
We'll report back. We'll do a segment. Go, hey, just to report back on Adrian's beer. He was not wrong. Elderberry. Yeah. Nice. Well, speaking of European hops, I see that Blue Lake Hops also has a new, is it a German wet hop product?
It is a German wet hop product. So what happened in San Diego at HomebrewCon, where we had our booth, and I was doing my presentation, directly across from us in another booth was Trip Closer. He does beer trips tours, and he talked to us afterwards, and he said, I'm friends with a German brewer, and I'm helping him bring in his product to the United States. Are you guys interested in this? Well, we're doing wet hops. He's doing wet hops. And yeah, So his name is Martin Schmalzel. He has a farm in the Hallertau region in Germany, and his process is different. And instead of being frozen, what he's doing is he's harvesting the hops, he's milling them while they're wet, and then he's packaging them and pasteurizing them.
Okay.
So you can use these hops just like a regular T90 in terms of throwing it in your kettle. If you let them drain out, whirlpool, all those kinds of things, you don't have to bag them. But they're also pasteurized. So this is the homebrew size. It's 300 grams. It's a metal tin. And then we also have 1 kilogram foils that are vacuum sealed.
Okay.
But because they're pasteurized, again, anything you do to a hop is going to change its flavor and characters. But it also means it doesn't have to be refrigerated.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Stable. So you don't have to take up refrigerator space in your brew house to have a wet hop, or in your freezer. You can just have a box sitting on a shelf somewhere.
Sure. That's crazy.
Right. And
we should mention it was a can, right? We should mention it was a can that you held up.
Yeah, so
it looks like a
for the
tuna
homebrew
can.
size. It's still kind of a lot for 5 gallons. I've actually used this 300 gram amount, which is about 10 ounces, to make a hop water with this. And what it looks like.
He's opening it for us now.
Hashish.
Need that smell-o-vision.
Yeah, it looks like a cannabis product.
It's damp.
Because it's kind of damp and mash, right?
So
nice.
Another good way to describe it is if people use like chewing tobacco, it looks like a tin of chewing tobacco. It's packed in there, really super tight. But I can take it out with my fingers and kind of pinch it. It's very crumbly.
Yeah.
And this is, again, another thing where if you use it in your kettle, because of the moisture content, it will stick together. So you do want to kind of break it up when you throw it in there. But both the sets of hops, when you first pick them up, it's almost like a cooling sensation because they're wet, but you can actually squeeze them and get the liquid out of them.
Wow.
So I know this is a bonus for those of you on Facebook watching the video here.
You'll be able to find it. You can go to Facebook. They just live on the page. So if you want to get a look.
So what I did was I just put a pinch in this garlic press.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't done this before, but I'm hoping it's going to work.
We're going to get to see the oh, right. No, there's
there we go.
Juice coming out of there. There's a whole bunch of hop juice.
There we go.
And that's just, he's squeezing the size of a garlic clove out of
it's dripping so nice.
So
out of a garlic smasher.
Take that and put that into a
censor that Facebook.
You literally can, have a wet hop beer in your glass right there.
Oh, right. Just by doing it in an already done beer, you're saying, like the beer.
That is cool.
Exactly.
Wow.
Put it on the bar. Put it on the bar.
And also because it's pasteurized for dry hopping purposes, again, you can throw it right in there. Another key thing, because of the fact that it was pasteurized, the heat does isomerize some of the alpha acids. So he does have on there the alpha acid, but he also has the iso-alpha acid amount on there. This is true with both of the products. The number that you're going to see is a lot lower than you typically would expect. So like, let's say a Cascade is like 5% alpha acid.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to see something like 1 or 2. It's going to be a lot lower because it's based on weight. So because of that water that's in there, what I do is I do use Beersmith for a lot of my calculations. I plug in the wet hop product. I plug in the alpha acid that's on there so that I can get a more predictable bitterness from them. But you're really looking for the oil flavors that are coming out of here more than the bitterness. I mean, you're going to get some, of course. Also, because this has been pasteurized and that isomerization happens, you can put this in water and it will immediately go into solution. So making hop water is literally just taking this with water, and there you go. Now you got.
So no bagging of this one when we brew.
You don't need to bag this one at all. Nope.
And I got a question about varietals. So is it all the typical German varietals, or is it limited to specific?
So
is
he's
it-
only doing the hops that are on his farm. He has, I want to say it's 12 different varieties. The one that I'm really love is Mandarina Bavaria.
Oh, nice.
I made a beer
Nice.
with that. It was like Mandarin oranges. Um,
You
and I
don't
took the
say.
beer, yeah, weird. I took the beer to him though, and he's like, "Oh, these aren't my hops." I'm like, "Yeah, it is,"
Hmm.
but I hopped it like an American beer, not like
There
a
you go.
German style beer. So it was quite a bit hoppier. And the growers are saying the Mandarin of Bavaria is changing. It's kind of losing some of its character over time.
Hmm.
So they're actually more excited about some of the other different varieties. But they have for bittering hops, there's Hercules and Perle. They have the Huel Melon. The beer that I was drinking at the beginning was 100% Hallertau Blanc.
Oh,
So
yes.
Mhm.
I love
it tastes
Hallertau
good.
Blanc.
When I was taking a sample out of the kettle, the grapefruit was incredibly strong. And what I did was I whirlpooled with it, and then I dry hopped with the wet hops as well. The grapefruit was super strong. That did fade away over time, and now it matches more of the description of the tropical hop and that Sauvignon Blanc white grape taste.
Hmm.
It's there for sure.
And all of these varieties that you're mentioning, are this all available on Blue Lake Hops right now too?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So
Awesome.
you're importing all this stuff from there. That's great.
That's correct. Yep. And when you go onto the website and you're placing orders, and I think that this is the one that people are going to be interested in trying out first because the shipping's a lot cheaper. It doesn't have to be frozen. So you'll actually see on there, I tried to make it clear the shipping options are different.
Okay.
I mean, obviously it's going to cost a lot more for the frozen, but the frozen varieties we have to ship the 3-day. We don't have a choice on that.
Sure. But what a great way to like dip your toe in the process and the products, right? Like let's save a little money on the shipping if you're nervous.
Right.
I mean, most home brewers I know, they're like, no, let's get everything we want. But
Right, right.
if you're on a budget and you want to try this, I think that's great.
And I also think it's kind of cool to be able to like, how many places can say they've made a wet hopped German?
That's
German
where I
wet
was going to
beer.
go with is you're getting these hops from Europe and they came across on a container ship, months old. Who knows how they were managed or held or,
Yeah.
So to get something that is as close to the field as you can, that's pretty exciting for me like I said, I'm kind of a Huel Melon, Hallertau Blanc, Mandarina guy. Like I love those beers. I've had so many good examples, and that's with hops that were imported. So I think this is I'm getting excited.
Yeah. But Michael, the way I would describe it kind of just how you did. Like I want you to brew with this product, and then at the next homebrew event, be like, hey, guys, do you want to try my wet hop beer? I use these hops from a can that were shipped on a hot container ship this summer and have been sitting in my garage for a year because I didn't have time to use them yet. Do you want to taste my beer? Like just describe it like
just to see how they
sounds horrible.
Yeah.
So just to be fair,
my God.
These hops did not come on a container ship.
Okay, yeah.
We flew them.
Presumably,
the point is well made though. Is like they're not refrigerated. They're not vacuum. I mean, they're canned, right?
Yeah.
So it would be kind of interesting to be like, yeah, they just kind of sat in my garage for a year, and I just kind of did whatever I did with them.
I want it to sound as bad as possible, and then give this delicious wet hop beer.
Right.
Yeah, so Peter in the chat wants to know if they're available in Australia. I think what Peter needed to ask, and he didn't ask, is how much is shipping to Australia?
Right.
I would say reach out to us. We don't have that on our website. All our shipping is listing for the USA. But email or there's a contact that's on there also, and we'll figure something out.
There you go. Make a special exception for Peter if you have to. He'll brew you a good sample of beer. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and how awesome would it be? Like again, the process. Now for the German hops, his process, he's very tight-lipped. It is patented. I have no idea how he's doing it.
Very German.
Very German.
Now, to be fair to Peter, are you distributing all of the German hop, or are you just distributing their hop here?
It's the grower, it does the process with his own hops that he has
Right.
there. And then we're shipping them over here and then selling them.
But I guess what Travis is asking is, are you kind of this grower's U.S. distribution, or are you his global distribution?
We are not the exclusive people bringing it in necessarily.
There you go.
There are other people too. We're, as far as I know, we've brought in the most to be able to ship.
Well, I'd be curious, maybe our friend down under maybe has somebody that is actively importing this product, but I don't know.
I'm going to say
Australia.
no.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Probably
can
not.
tell you the number of people importing the product right now is very small.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
And it's mostly through our connections with other professional breweries and what they're doing also. So as far as the homebrew size, I think we're the only ones that are really focusing on that being available. Most places are looking at, bringing in quite a bit larger quantities.
Okay.
But man, wouldn't it be cool? Again, the processes could be potentially done anywhere to use New Zealand hops to do that, or to use English hops, or mosaic, wet mosaic that's available year round. Just
Totally.
the potential.
Potential's huge. I love it. Well, for now, go to bluelakehops.com, and that can be your supplier. Experiment with these things. Let us know how it goes. You can always email us here at brewstrong@thebrewingnetwork.com, or contact through Blue Lake Hops to figure out how they can get you this stuff. There's an ordering page just right there. And just a few notes to remember. There's going to be a little more shipping cost on the Blue Lake hops process, and they need to ship frozen. But the new German wet hop product, you can save a little money on that one. They are two different products, but they aim for the same goal, which is that you get fresh wet hops in your beer.
I also did throw on a coupon for the people that are watching this and listening to this. If you enter a coupon code BrewStrong, you'll get $10 off.
Heck yeah.
Very nice.
There we go. Now
That's a wrap. That's a wrap.
You're in good shape already. All right. Hey, Adrian, thanks so much for spending time with us. I'm glad Jamil found you. This is such a cool product. I'm glad to learn about it.
Yeah. Well, and I'm looking forward and trying to get more people to use it. And it's cool. It makes something different and unique. And available year round. Well,
send us your pale ale at least. Maybe throw a little bit of that brown in there if you get a chance. We'd love to try it.
Yes.
And Michael and Travis, I think we're going to have to get some in your hands. Maybe I need to throw down the Brewing Network credit card and get a couple ounces to you guys, so we can taste some on a future show ourselves, right?
I have
hops, absolutely.
several ideas.
Okay.
Already brewing, so
great.
Not yet. They're not brewing yet. They're in my head.
They're in your head. Yeah, they're brewing in your noggin. But that's all right.
Yeah.
Well, let's make it happen. All right. Hey, thanks again to our sponsor, Blickman Engineering. Go to blickmanengineering.com and check them out. They've got everything for every brewer. Trust me. Just go have a look over there. We've got a question and answer show coming up, right, guys?
Absolutely.
All right. If you're tuned in live right now on Facebook, just hang in there. You might even get to watch us do behind the scenes stuff for the next few minutes before we start the next show. If you're listening on the podcast, you'll get our Q&A show in a couple weeks. Thanks for listening. Travis, Mike, appreciate you guys. It's been fun.
Yes, it has. Brew strong.
Until next time, brew strong.
There you go. Brew strong, everybody. Take care of yourselves.
Cheers.